Welcome, everyone. Let's begin the afternoon session of the Education Administration Full Committee. Appreciate everyone being here. Committee, good to see everyone. As we begin, though, let's get the clerk to call the roll, make sure we have a quorum.
Representative Baum, Carringer, Cassida, Sapicki, Clemens, Cochran, Darby, Gillespie, Hakeem, Haston, Lafferty, Love, Parkinson, Reagan, Vice Chairman Hurt, Chairman White.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Members, anyone have any recognitions and or comments you'd like to make as we begin the committee? Seeing none, hearing none. I always like to start the committee out. This Education Committee, which we oversee legislation that deals with governing our children. So I always like to start our committee with a prayer. So bow your heads, please. Holy Father, we come before you asking for your wisdom and your guidance, because all wisdom comes from you. You've given us great responsibility to understand the things that come before us for the benefit of the young children across our state. Watch over us, guide us, protect our schools and our teachers, and give us strength. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Thank you. Okay, members, we have 4 bills, but before we start the bills, because we got a couple that might take a little bit of time, we got a 10-minute presentation. Was that okay is that going to mess y'all's schedule up, Okay, yeah, we'll give you special consideration, but we got 4 and may drag on a little bit. So we have with us Books from Birth, Mr. James Pond. We invited him to come back and give us an update on what's going on in early childhood literacy. So without further ado, Mr. Pond, if you may begin, just make sure your mic's on and state your name and for the AV record.
Great. James Pond, President of Governor's Early Literacy Foundation. Chairman White, members of the committee, we really appreciate your time this afternoon. We wanted to share with you some of the things that are happening around crucial conversations happening in early literacy and education. First, we really wanted to thank the committee for the Tennessee Success Act. I think the strong message that was conveyed around education and literacy has really provided, I think, some fertile ground for some important conversations to happen across the early literacy landscape. So thank you. Today, we'd like to speak to you about the work of our foundation and how we're contributing to early literacy efforts here.
So my name, well, I did it once, sorry. Okay, my name is Dean Hoskins, the Vice President of the Foundation, and wanted to just give you a quick and brief overview to show you just how much the foundation and our efforts to support families across the state with children since 2019, predominantly a lot of growth. You'll remember that from 2004 forward, we manage and oversee and support, with the legislature's help, the Dolly, Parton Imagination Library Program, which is referred to as our Birth to 5 book delivery. We're serving approximately 286,000 children monthly with a book in the mail from birth to age 5. We do have evidence, research studies from Tennessee showing that this program does indeed prepare our children for kindergarten and also see results of them outperforming non-participants through 5th grade in literacy, math, and behavior. Additionally, we have spoken about the Book Bus program in the past. We now have some 32 programs across the state that we've helped fund, where they take a decommissioned school bus and retrofit it, turn it into a mobile library. Some of us remember those from our childhood, and go out across the region, across their district in the summer to provide books, partnering with a food program as well to increase literacy and exposure to books and reading across the summer. Additionally, we have expanded our Storybook Trail program. We will be in 41 different either state or local parks by this summer, where we take typically an imagination library book and we use a quarter-mile trail to help a child and a family read that book as they are outside, to bring home to children and families that literacy is a part of everyday life and about every activity that you do. And so marrying those outdoor activity experiences with literature and with reading as well. We have, since 2019, also then began working with our K-3 book delivery program in the summer, caregiver engagement, and the select collaborative, statewide collaborative, that we will focus our attention on those 3 programs. Excuse me. Those 3 programs now. We have seen, particularly in light of the COVID school interruption, and yet the winds were brewing earlier than that, that caregivers, although we say you're a child's first teacher, not everyone's prepared to be a child's first teacher or feels equipped to be a child's first teacher. Sorry. And so putting tools in the hands of caregivers became an important focus that we wanted to delve into. We have partnered with a company called Ready for K. It is a text-based, evidence-based program that sends a text into the family that has the ability to opt out if they do not want to participate, gives them to their phone a tip on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday that build on a theme. So on Monday, they get a fact about literacy and reading and the importance of that. Wednesday and Friday, they get suggested, everyday, easy to implement ideas. The one I got today, acting as if I'm a 4-year-old, is about helping them build a story. So you start the story at bedtime, and then you ask them to build on that story, and you kind of create this imaginary tale together. That particular program, we are serving over 180,000 families, 211,000 students, and that is from pre-K through 4th grade. And so that is a year-long program. We did partner with the Tennessee Department of Education for the funding behind that program. It's averaging about $4 per child to provide that text-based program. We have sent 23 million messages since January of last year to participants, and it is funded through this calendar year. We are in discussions with TDOE about remaining ESSER dollars that would fund it all the way through calendar year 23 and perhaps beyond. There is research and feedback being done around that program. 81% of the parents that receive and participate in this program in Tennessee report doing the activities, liking the activities, finding them very easy to assimilate into their day-to-day life. And 92% of parents said that these activities, they feel, have helped their children grow in literacy skills. Of understanding vocabulary, expanding vocabulary, and then using a lot of those new words and activities. I'm going to turn that over to James to talk about our K-3 home library program.
So in 2019, one of the things that we recognized through traveling the state and listening to our early literacy partnerships was that there was a lack of resources for kindergarten to 3rd graders, particularly around high quality books and resources. And so we saw an opportunity for us to be able to step in and create a program to serve those kids, particularly over the summer months. So we developed a program working with Scholastic. We were the first organization to have Scholastic do an at-home delivery to students across the state. And now what we're doing is using that very same program to scaffold into a lot of the summer programming that's being done either around the summer camps or other initiatives that school districts are using to support their children. And so just sort of building on this, in year 1, oh, sorry, we don't have the right slide here. So I'll just go back to this. In year 1, we had initially wanted to do a pilot to be able to provide evidence-based research around whether or not it was making a difference in terms of children's 3rd grade reading scores, if we were making an impact in terms of changing that child's perception of themselves as a reader and their motivation to read. And so we initially launched this program in 2020, just prior to COVID. Our intention was to serve about 35,000 students. We did that through private funding. And then when COVID happened, the Department of Education had actually come to us and said, could we partner with you to expand this program and make it more accessible to a larger number of students? So we responded to that need and were able to serve another 55,000 students through that program. Since that time, we've had conversations with the Speaker Sexton's office, the governor's office, and the legislature around creating a statewide access to this program for all rising first, second, and third graders. So currently, we're serving all rising first and second graders across the state, providing them with summer book packets, which are 6 books, high-quality books that are fiction and nonfiction, think sheets to really help with comprehension so that children are interacting with those books. They're not just receiving them in the mail, and a caregiver engagement guide so that parents know, what am I doing with these books? How do I interact with my child and make this beneficial? And then we have 2 years of research behind this. So Lipscomb University has partnered with us to take a look at RTI screeners that are pre and post program, and then also doing a motivation survey with students to look at their perception of themselves as a reader and their motivation summer. If we can change and shift those two things, we increase a culture of reading for our children. So we see this as a highly effective program. This coming year for 2024, we'll look to serve all rising first, second, and third graders and to initiate a program to begin looking to serve kindergartners who are very difficult to identify as a demographic because they're leaving the Imagination Library at 5. Catching them in that registration coming into that school year is a little more challenging, but we're working through the process to be able to identify how to get those resources to those students as well. So in the coming years, we're really going to be looking at efficacy. So we'll be wrapping some additional research and dollars around looking at how this is impacting those third grade reading scores, which is you as a committee are all looking to accomplish because we know what the implications of third grade reading is. All right, so next is something that we've put in place in looking at K-3 in the book selection process. We really wanted this to be Tennessee specific. We didn't want this to just be early literacy experts speaking into this. And so we've created an Educator Advisory Council to address this.
So earlier earlier this fiscal year, back in the summer of 21, as we were delivering books to rising first graders across the state, we also put out a call to school districts and schools to see who would want to serve on what we're calling the Educator Advisory Council. And we had an inordinate number of voluntary applications. Because as we all know, our teachers and district leaders care deeply about our children and about their learning and about improving their literacy scores and math scores. We selected 21 individuals from across the state. We represent every region of the state, the grand regions. We also have a cross-section of district leaders, principals, and grade level teachers who have been working on reviewing a list of books, a universe of books for each grade that will be delivered this coming summer of 22. They met in person in January to actually go through, read all of the books, defend positions, and discuss the final selections for what books will be delivered into the home this coming summer. That in the same vein that James had talked about, in a 6-book pack that include think sheets, caregiver guides, and this group is also then creating additional resources that will be used by not only the teachers, because they receive a copy of the book sets as well, so that these books can be used in the classroom the following fall, but they also will be sending a lot of those resources home, or they will be available on our website to be used. We're excited about this particular new advisory group that will walk with us so that we stay aligned with Tennessee standards. We stay aligned with the curriculum that's being used in the schools across the state, which varies, and that we are engaging our teachers in the books that are being delivered and that they're going to use in their classrooms.
So the last and final thing we wanted to talk to this committee about and we're most excited about is SELECT, which stands for the State Early Literacy Education Collaborative of Tennessee. I've provided a report that we did this past year. This was birthed again in 2019. As I was traveling the state, I realized that we had lots of regional early literacy efforts, putting a lot of innovation and ideas behind their efforts, as well as resources and funding. But none of those initiatives had actually talked to each other. So between the Nashville Blueprint, Memphis First 8, the Chattanooga Basics, all these initiatives were not having internal conversations and shared learning around early literacy. And so we realized there was an opportunity to bring these groups together. We intended on doing that in 2020, and of course, life happened. But this past September, we did bring that group together. We brought 16 principals from across the state to have some meaningful conversations around the efforts that they were having, how we might be able to move forward in a more effective way. And we had a really great progress report. So that report's there for you to read at your leisure. The two key things that came out of that were, one, that the Governor's Early Literacy Foundation was really poised as a nonpartisan organization that doesn't have an agenda to be a convener of early literacy efforts across our state. And second was there was an opportunity for us to serve as a conduit, both for the General Assembly, for this committee, for the Department of Education, and all of the early literacy efforts across the state. So this has obviously grown. And so we've had a number of meetings with Chairman White, with Senator Watson, with Commissioner Schwinn, and with our early literacy partners across the state, so that we could look at how Select might be able to serve the early literacy needs of Tennessee. And we found that there were four, and I'll give you a fifth benefit of what we want to accomplish through doing this. First and foremost is that we want to create a map of early literacy efforts across our state. I don't think we know collectively all that is actually happening across our state, who's doing what. So it'll give us an opportunity to look at what's being done, how it's being funded, and how it aligns with the Tennessee Literacy Success Act. As well, it'll give us an opportunity to look at where gaps and opportunities to be able to serve in a greater way might be. So it'll allow us to report and understand current efforts, and also to act as a conduit for meaningful conversations to happen across early literacy efforts. We're planning on holding the next convening in June of this year, and the group has already grown from 16 to about 17 representatives want to show up at the second iteration. What's that? Now it's about 75. It'll probably grow to 100 by the time we actually host the event. But we're looking at this as an opportunity for us to be able to convey truly what's happening in early literacy, looking at best practices, and then providing reports to the Department of Education, to this committee, and to our early literacy partners, so that we can align and be rowing in the same direction on our efforts around early literacy. And then I promise you a fifth benefit to this. It's that we are privately funding this. So we are not asking the state to provide funding for this. We actually believe that this will create that nonpartisan environment for people to feel free to really come and engage and work towards the goal, which is educating and bringing our kids to proficiency. So I've provided a logic model. I obviously won't walk you all through this, but you could read it at your leisure. Our three primary goals, our long-term goals at this, is one, to create a workforce readiness in the next generation, post-secondary engagement, and third grade reading scores. But our efforts are all listed out here. We'll continue to refine this model as we move forward, but we're seeing a high receptivity of this of partners across the state. And so we'll look forward to reporting back to this committee on our progress and what the results of that are. So with that, I wanted to open the floor if there's any questions or comments about this, or things that this committee has thought through that we as a foundation could be thinking about.
Well, thank you so very much. We appreciate y'all being here today and sharing this with us. You're doing such an important work, because early childhood literacy is so very, very important. But you're supposed to bring Dolly with you. Don't you remember I asked that?
Gosh, if I could only pull that off.
Maybe next time. Okay, Mr. Parson, Representative Parson, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me say Semper Fi to that devil dog right there in front of me.
Hoorah, Semper Fi.
Right. Yeah, and look, and I was noticing when you had the wrong slide up there, I saw you adopt, improvise, and overcome. So good job.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, but I just wanted to say kudos to you and thank you for what you're doing, and to the committee members and to the administration. This is more of what that intervention should look like, a collaborative, supportive environment, to our LEAs and our students, teachers, and their family, and the parents of these students. this is what it should look like. But too many times we take an antagonistic approach to, turning around our deficiencies in education. And it should never be an antagonistic approach. It should always be a collaborative, supportive approach. And it's just like raising a child. If you use positive reinforcement and support, it's highly possible that you're gonna get an amazing outcome from that child. And the same thing, that model works on a macro scale. If you're using positive interventions and support and versus an antagonistic or abusive relationship between the state and the schools, you're going to get people or entities that feel like they're in a corner and have to claw their ways out. But this is a great approach, and so I want to applaud the governor publicly, for what he's doing, and more importantly, I want to applaud your team and y'all's approach to bringing everybody together so that we can raise our proficiency in literacy together as a unit for all of our people in Tennessee. Thank you so much. But you had to have a devil dog on board to make that happen too. No slight against you, because I appreciate you too. Right. Okay.
She lives with me. She knows what it's all about.
Right. Okay. And thank you so much again. Thank you, Mr.
No,
Chair.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else like to ask a question of our guests while they're here? Seeing none. Well, thank y'all so very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Dean Hoskins.
Thank you.
and
Yep, we'll be in touch.
James.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good work. Good work. Thank you. Okay, members, we have 4 bills on the calendar today. We're going to start out with House Bill 1754 by Representative Smith. You are recognized as well.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.
We're back in session. You may begin.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman and Committee. House Bill 1754 has an amendment that was added in Subcommittee. 12895 is the drafting code, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
That is correct. Does he rewrite the bill?
It does, sir. Thank you.
Okay, members, would we like to go ahead and add that to the bill? Got a motion second. All those in favor of adding Amendment 12895 onto House Bill 1754 indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We're back on your bill as amended. You may begin.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. There are many efforts underway to try to expand the base of individuals who can interact in our school classrooms to instruct our students. The original bill was drafted to allow to expand current Tennessee Code annotated, which states that those adjunct professors could currently go into grades 9 through 12 and also work with their LEA and become a school teacher in that capacity. The original bill was going to go down to K through 12, and greater minds than mine prevailed, and the Department of Education stepped forward and offered me a very reasoned response to reduce that to the middle school through the 12th grade, just simply because when you're an adjunct professor, you typically have a discipline of specialty like biology, economics, political science, chemistry, and typically in our K through 5 space, it's a little more general. And there's as we know, the governor and this body is wanting to focus on literacy. So I amended the bill. The amendment essentially allows an adjunct professor to work with their local LEA to become a teacher in the middle school and high school space. And Chairman, I'll be glad to accept questions and comments. Thank you, sir.
Okay, we have that explanation. Representative Parton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chair Lady. Also, I'm for the bill. I actually want to sign on to the bill, but I hate that it was clipped a little bit because, you also have adjunct professors whose specialties are education, which would remove their ability to go into these lower grades. And so I don't understand, necessarily what the reasoning. I hear you in what you were told, but I just, think that we're, by trimming it, we're missing opportunities. But I'm going to vote for the bill anyway. I wish we can get it back to where, everybody can be involved. Thank you.
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chair Lady Smith, thank you for bringing this. I think it's an excellent bill. However, there's been some confusion. I got some phone calls this afternoon. I want to make it clear, or rather I would like for you to make it clear, that this is not hiring adjunct professors in lieu of fully qualified teachers that are licensed in our state, but to actually address shortages. Is that correct?
Representative Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. And to Chairman Reagan's very artfully spoken, this is not to displace anyone that's in the current practice or licensure of teaching. Rather, instead, it opens up an opportunity at the local educational agency for them to take care of vacancies, substitute teachers, and to make that decision locally. This is just enabling legislation for that decision to be made locally, Chairman.
Chairman Reagan?
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. It was what I understood. And for the benefit of those watching online, I hope you've taken this to heart. This is not an intent to hire people to replace fully licensed teachers. It is rather to make up for shortages. So thank you.
Representative Smith?
Thank you, Chairman White. And I do want to speak to my colleague's point on the front row here. I join you, but sometimes we're happy to have half a loaf rather than a full, and understanding that there were people that were arguing pretty forcefully on that. And I do think that it's worth a discussion, but I think with the focus on early literacy, that we want to make sure that phonics, reading, and comprehension is the focus. And I think that may be done better at the local level. But thank you so much for your support, and I look forward to having you sign on.
Thank you, and thank you, Chairman Reagan, for pointing out that. Make sure that I think a false story got out there, and for correcting that. Anyone else would like to address the sponsor of the bill? May I call for the question? The question's been called for. So all those in favor of moving House Bill 754 to calendar rules indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Moves out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, committee and chairman.
Thank you very much. Brings us to item number 2, which is Chairman Whitson, House Bill 1667. You have a motion and a second. Any amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do have an amendment that makes the bill and rewrites the bill.
We have a motion, second on the amendment. Is your amendment 13337?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Question, second on the amendment. All those in favor of adding it to the bill indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We're now back on your bill as amended. You may describe it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. House Bill 1667 is the State Librarian Coordinator bill. I've been carrying this thing for a few years, and it always gets to budget sub and goes behind the budget. We hope we can get it out this year. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to address the Tennessee Association of School Librarians. This legislation, and I learned a lot from that meeting. This legislation will establish and fund a certified school librarian to serve as the Tennessee State Librarian Coordinator in the Department of Education. Duties and responsibilities of this new position include assisting school librarians in implementing the department's strategic plan, consulting, guiding, and training school librarians to strengthen school library programs for students in grades kindergarten through 12th grade, providing input on revisions to the school librarian evaluation model, working with the state library and archives to provide school libraries with equal access to high-quality educational reading materials and resources, supporting the department's work by promoting best practices among school librarians and technology coordinators, and developing and promoting strategies for school librarians to partner with classroom instructors to support school and district level instructional programs. Like I said, we've been working on this for several years. The committee has always supported it, but I hope this year we can find the funding and working with the Department of Education on that. And with that, Mr. Chairman and committee, I renew my motion.
Thank you very much, members. With that explanation, questions of the sponsor? Chairman Lafferty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. What exactly is a digital citizenship initiative, please?
A digital citizenship initiative?
It's under section 1.
Oh, excuse me.
Item
okay.
1.
Okay, it wasn't in my talking points. Section 1. It's My understanding is to promote civics in approved programs with the Department of Education with the school librarians.
Okay, thank you.
Part of the Dewey Decimal System, right? Long time ago. Yes, sir.
I was part of the card catalog system.
Card catalog system, yeah. Anyone else have a question of Chairman Whitson on this bill? Question's been called. Any objection? Hearing none. All those in favor of moving House Bill 1667 to Finance, Ways and Means indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Lose that. And thank you for being patient with us in our presentation.
Oh, I learned a lot too.
Item number 3, House Bill 324 by Chairman Baum. You are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman White. There's an amendment that was added in subcommittee. Do we have to add it again, or is it on?
We do have to add it again. Could you give us the amendment number?
It's Amendment 012689, and what it does is it changes the date this bill would go into effect from a prior date to July the 1st, 2022.
So got a motion and a second on the amendment. Any objection? Okay, all those in favor of adding 12689 amendment to the House Bill 324 indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Is that the only amendment you have, sir?
Yes.
Okay, we're now back on your bill as properly amended. You may proceed.
Thank you, Chairman White. This is a bill that would change the grading scale in the state of Tennessee from the current scale, which is sort of a 7-point scale, to a 10-point scale. For example, the current 7-point scale says an A is 93 to 100, a B is 85 through 92, and so on and so forth. This bill would change the grading scale to a 10-point scale, so 90 to 100 would be an A, 80 through 89 would be a B, and so on and so forth. The intent of this bill is to level the playing field between Tennessee and virtually every other state in the U.S., including all of the states, all 8 that border the state of Tennessee. They all have a 10-point scale. We have this 7-point scale. Here's why it would level the playing field. If you're in the state of Tennessee and you have a 92, that's a B. And if you're in Kentucky or Arkansas or Georgia and you have a 92, that's an A. Leveling the playing field is important when our Tennessee students compete for admissions to colleges around the country, like Harvard or Duke. We don't want students from Kentucky to get in front of students from Tennessee who all have 92s, but they have a 4.0 and our students don't. This has implications that are even broader than that. Our Tennessee students also compete for scholarship money across the country with many organizations, nonprofit entities, corporations. Coca-Cola offers scholarships, and it's based partly on GPA. Right now, our Tennesseans don't have a level playing field with their competitors because our GPAs are lower for the same numerical grades. Let me bring up a couple of other points. When students transfer into the state of Tennessee from another state, they could see their letter grades drop. If a sophomore at a high school in another state has a 92 and they transfer into Tennessee, that 92 goes from an A to a B. We have evidence that students have actually gone back to their original state so that their GPA wouldn't drop. This has implications for our military families who often are transferred around the country and are often transferred into the state of Tennessee and have their high school students' GPA drop just because a 92 or maybe an 84 is a lower grade in the lower letter grade in the state of Tennessee than in other states. So this is a bill to level the playing field. A consequence of this bill would be, however, that more students would become eligible for Hope Scholarship lottery money. That's not really my intent for bringing the bill. I'm not trying to spend more Hope Scholarship lottery money, but you can see how it would increase eligibility, and so the bill does have about a $3 million fiscal note. But if I had to make a few comments on that, I would say that the Lottery Commission in the 2021 fiscal year turned over to the state of Tennessee around $482 million. Proceeds, about $376 million worth of those proceeds were allocated towards Hope Scholarship, the General Assembly's Merit Awards, Aspire Awards, Dual Enrollment Awards, with over $100 million left over. This extra amount gets swept into the Tennessee Promise Endowment Fund. Again, my goal isn't really to spend more Hope Scholarship money, but this bill would cost about $3 million. We've got over $100 million extra, or we did in the 2021 calendar year. I think it's important to give our Tennessee students an equal opportunity to get into Harvard or Duke or be awarded a Coca-Cola scholarship, or allow families to transfer into the state of Tennessee and not have their kids' GPAs drop simply because they cross state lines. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir, for that excellent presentation. And you brought up the lottery thing, and so, but I think Representative Parson has a question first. Then I come back. I would like to have the committee consider a motion. So, Representative Parson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill. But your intent should be to spend more of the lottery money because there's more Tennessee students going to college, and so you know I would make that a talking point actually. You know, if it's going to put more of our students in higher ed and different places, we should do that. I think this is a good bill, and and I appreciate you bringing it, and I'm gonna be on board with it also. If you let a Democrat sign on, I'm gonna be on board with it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Chairman Sapicki.
And you don't have to answer this today, but if you can get clarification for us, because I have a feeling, because it's lottery dollars, it's going to go to the lottery calendar. How would this bill affect somebody that is a sophomore right now or a freshman in college under the 7-point scale that did not qualify for Hope, but they're going through college right now? Would they be able to go back and get their grades adjusted to the 10-point so now they could qualify for Hope? So you don't have to answer that today. If you could just, when we come back on this to talk about it, if we could have that answered, that's going to be important, because that could mean a lot of kids that are bearing financial hardships right now may otherwise not have to bear those hardships. Thank you.
Thank you. And members, if I may point out as we move forward, we're always at the will of the committee. It does have a 2-point where right at the $3 million, we should pull out the Hope Scholarship money. The administration's got a bill probably coming for us to raise the Hope dollars up this year. So that would probably even go up. But because we do have a lottery calendar where we look at all lottery bills as they come through, usually about 10 a year, I'd like to make the motion that we send this to Chairman Lafferty's Committee of Higher Education, where we put bills on the lottery calendar so we can deal with them all at one time as we determine how much lottery money we are going to spend for the year. So I'd like to lay that out in the form of a motion. If you'd like to have a discussion first, just raise your hand. We have a second, but Chairman Sapicki, we have a motion and a second on that, but then Chairman Sapicki.
Just to clarify, when this
Okay, Chairman Reagan, you have a question? Okay, Representative Clemens.
First of all, I'd like to point out to my colleague, Representative Parkinson, that I'm already signed on to this bill, so they'll obviously let anybody on it. But my question was about why would we re-refer it to another committee? Has that already been assigned to that committee, or is this a new? If it's got a fiscal note, I assume it's going to go to finance. Why are we sending it on a U-turn somewhere else?
Okay, I can address that. In higher education, we have, dealing with higher education bills, spending money for higher education. We have a lottery calendar that flows through the subcommittee of higher education, where then we can take all these up at one time. And so that's been the process for a number of years.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I've been aware of that, I guess that lottery calendar, but I thought that was a discretion of the chairman who kind of put it on a special calendar of their own committee within that committee at that time, not re-referring it from others to that location. Maybe that may be my misunderstanding.
Thank you. Chairman Speaker, did we jump over you a while ago?
Well, just want to clarify that the presenter does not have to get approval from higher ed on this bill. This bill will automatically go to the lottery calendar consideration. I want to make sure that he doesn't have to go through another vote in higher ed.
Right. No, it goes to the lottery calendar.
Okay.
Then we take it up in higher education. Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? We do have a motion and a second before us. Any further discussion on the motion with the second? Question's been called for. So all those in favor of moving House Bill 324 to Higher Education Subcommittee under Chairman Lafferty, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. And
Thank
thank you for bringing this bill before us, Representative Baum. Members, item number 4 on our calendars today is House Bill 1838 by Chairman Sapicki. You got a motion and a second. You have any amendments, Chairman Sapicki?
No, Mr. Chairman, no.
Your members, 1838, you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the attention that this bill has brought. I know it's been wearing on a lot of people in here, and I do apologize for that. That was not the intent. The intent was to bring more diversity, more balance, more independence to the State Board of Education. Currently, all 9 members that are appointed by the governor and confirmed by this General Assembly are there. What this bill hopes to do is bring a little bit more balance to that, where the governor would appoint 3, the speaker would appoint 3 of the House, and the lieutenant governor would appoint 3 based off of the congressional districts, the new congressional districts across the state of Tennessee. All of the previous guidelines for the diversity and the balance put forth by demographics would still be all in place. And what this would do is currently the governor appoints the commissioner of education. The governor appoints all 9 members. Now, I've been doing research and trying to figure this out, but I have yet to find anybody that has been before an education committee for confirmation on the state board has been denied by the education committee. I can't find one. Now, I've been doing research for many, many years back, and that kind of control, and first of all, let me tell you this. This has nothing to do with the current governor. This has to do with creating balance in the State Board of Education so that no one branch, separation of powers here, no one branch can control, and you've been on this education with me, the State Board of Education could quite possibly be the most powerful and most important board in the state of Tennessee that controls the rules and policies from the bills that we enact here. And to make sure that the Department of Education, who last week was opposing this bill, which made me scratch my head, it shouldn't matter who's on the State Board of Education to the department, was opposing this bill last week. We need to make sure that whatever we decide here in the General Assembly, those rules and those policies that are promulgated by the State Board are without influence of one branch. To keep the balance there, to make sure that those members are doing exactly what is best for the students of Tennessee. Doesn't matter who's sitting in the governor's office, doesn't matter who's sitting in the speaker's office, those people have a job to do. And that's to make sure, and we had a discussion earlier today in committee on the other education committee about this kind of an issue, maintaining balance. So all this bill does is break it up into 3, 3, and 3 based off the congressional districts. Each speaker and the governor will have one appointment in each grand division to make sure that we keep balance and equity on the State Board of Education. Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer questions as best of my ability.
Okay, members, with that explanation before us, we're open to discussion of the sponsor of the bill. We do, and I think we have one requested speaker we'll come to in a moment, but Representative Parton will recognize you first.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman, for bringing the bill up. But I think that it's the state board exists because we created the state board here, right? In this body, and their powers exist because we gave them the power in this body. And so, if we ever want to eliminate the state board, we can just eliminate the state board in this body. So I don't understand why the legislation is necessary, because we have that power already to do anything that we want to do. We make the rules for the citizens, we make the rules for the governor, we make the rules for the courts, the judges, and we make the rules for ourselves as members. It's almost unchecked power. And so, I don't understand why this legislation is necessary, because if we don't like what the state board is doing, you can just eliminate the state board, or you can pass some legislation, just remove one member if you want to. So I think this is unnecessary. And then not just that, we already have the checks and balances to approve or disapprove anybody that the governor tries to put on the state board, but we approve them, and so if we don't want them there, all we got to do is say, no, we don't want them, send somebody else. So thank you, sir. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Cassidy. Sir.
I think we resemble. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am in favor of this bill. I've been up here 21 years, and there was a time when the executive branch had most of the power. And if I understand it right, what this does is what we do with nearly every other board, is equal power shared with the executive branch. And so I strongly urge you, gentlemen and ladies in this room, to support this. We need to share the power. We are accountable every 2 years. And we answer for our appointments. Trust me, I answer for mine. And so as we go forward, I would urge this body to continue expanding the power of the legislature, because I feel like we're much closer to the people than the executive branch is. Thank you.
Mr.
Chairman,
Easley?
Mr.
Oh,
Chairman.
yes, sir. You're recognized, Chairman.
To agree with my colleague here and my other colleague, we do have the ability to change whatever we need to change, to make sure that we keep balance, to make sure that one person doesn't have the power to reach into a committee or to reach into a board and wield influence over those members because that person appointed them. Or for a department to come to a board because those members were appointed by the same person and want things to happen a certain way. We have to maintain that balance to make sure that when this board that we confirm, we make sure that that board has the autonomy and the balance to do what's best for the students of Tennessee. We are talking about a board that can really direct education in Tennessee based off of the policy and the rules that they make on the bills that we write. And so that's what I would urge everybody, is to support this bill. This is not a slight on anybody here. It's just to maintain going forward in our system the checks and balances of government.
Thank you. Yes, sir. I'm getting ready to recognize you. Mr. Easley, would you come on up and take your place? You were a requested speaker on this bill. Representative Parton, you're recognized.
And thank you. And just a very quick response to my colleague. I understand what you're saying and what you're doing, and for the record, I ain't never been a fan of the state board anyway, but when we were getting slapped with charter schools and ASD rules and appeals, only directed what I saw as directed at Shelby County Schools. But I still think that we already have that balance in place. So, but I understand what you're doing, though. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I agree with you. And I would look forward to your support on this bill to make sure that we get diversity across the state of Tennessee. So.
I've got Chairman Reagan, and also Chairman Lafferty. Did you have your hand raised up? Okay, let's go to Chairman Reagan. I'll come back to Chairman Lafferty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And a very short speech in support of this bill, ladies and gentlemen. This is about governance. And I like the comments my colleague put forward. This is not a slam on the current administration, not intended to be. But the idea of good governance is that we balance the power of our government as the founders did from the very beginning of our nation. So, like my colleague previously spoke, I think that it's an important issue for us to address balance. It has nothing to do with specifics per se, but it can have a lot to do with specifics in the future. Thank you.
Chairman Lafferty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last sentence of the summary here, it talks about appointed on or after July 1, 2022. Does that mean on July 2 of 2022, if this bill passes, that we are all of a sudden going to have a completely new board?
You recognize, sir.
No, it does not. These board members serve for a prescribed amount of time. And so you have a trigger date that starts the process The state board, excuse me, the state board will look at the makeup of the board right now based off of those congressional districts, find out there's any holes right now in those appointments. And then as these appointments start to roll off in their sequential order moving forward over time, then those would be assigned to the correct member to replace them.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, without further, and maybe more questions in a minute, but I'm going to go out of session for Mr. Brent Easley. Out of session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Thanks for allowing me to come before the committee today. I'm here this afternoon to share with you that the governor is opposed to this legislation. There are generally a few boxes that we look at when we're analyzing education policy with the governor. Does this solve a problem? Does this promote student achievement and reward teacher excellence? Does this make things better for education in the state? This bill does none of those. The process as it currently stands has the governor making an appointment to the State Board of Education and the legislature confirming or rejecting those appointments. If the legislature decides to vote down one of those nominees, the legislature has the authority to do so under current law. Additionally, the legislature has the authority to approve or reject the rules that are promulgated by the State Board through the GovOps committees. This is a process that's been working well for years, and we're fortunate to have a State Board that has high-quality members and high-quality staff members. We have several new members that we've appointed to the board of late, and we feel confident that these individuals in these new roles will add value to the state. This bill does not add value. This bill is attempting to fix something that's not broken and will not move us closer as a state to the goals that we seek to achieve together. I hope these comments provide some context on the governor's position on this, and appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mr. Easley. Anybody on the committee want to ask Mr. Easley a question? Representative Clemens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you for being here and providing some perspective on this from the executive branch. The point was made earlier that we appoint other members to other boards. Can you elaborate on what's different about the State Board of Education and what's its similarities to the other boards and commissions the governor appoints and has appointed for some time versus the ones that we appoint as a body?
Thank you for the question. I can speak to the importance of this board. This board works to carry out the functions of the legislation that you all pass as a rulemaking body. The executive branch, the Department of Education, works with the board to lend support and assistance as needed. And as the sponsor noted, it's a very important board. The governor understands the importance of the board and spends a lot of time deliberating before appointments are made to that board. We have an entire office that is dedicated to appointments and confirmations, and we make sure that those folks who are appointed are high-quality individuals that can really add value. There are new members to the board, and some of those have not been confirmed yet, and we look forward to walking through the confirmation process on those.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that answer. You know, I don't often agree with this governor's educational agenda, but I do understand that if the governor has an education agenda and the people he appoints to that board, you know, are there and generally seek to carry out that agenda to the best of their ability, the legislature, we still have the ability to act as checks and balances on that. I mean, the process for those, you know, I think the point was made earlier for those watching at home or those here with us today who may not understand that whole process. Will you just briefly, you did a second ago, but will you just briefly talk about what happens, how the state board acts, and what happens with their actions and the rules that they promulgate?
So those rules are subject to, again, another check by the legislature through the GovOps process, and one that the chairman knows well. And you all can approve or reject those rules as well. So not only is there a check on the nominees themselves, but there is a check on the rules and the work product of the board.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, members. Any other members like to talk while we're out of session? Chairman Reagan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Easley, thank you for being here. Just basically one question. You've implied that there's not a problem that would be solved by this. The implication being we don't need to do it, but the question I put to you is this going to make anything worse?
It's a good question. I can't tell you that it would make something worse. I can tell you that I think it's a solution in search of a problem.
Chairman Reagan, follow up?
Point's been made. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any of the members, while we're out of session, want to ask a question of our guest speaker? I see none. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, we're back in session. Chairman Spicky? Check your mic again.
Excuse me, asking for a roll call vote. Let me unpack some of the things that the governor's office have said. Something very telling that we should have heard right there was educational agenda. Educational agenda. The governor does appoint and nominate the Commissioner of Education, who should be carrying out his educational agenda. We know Commissioner Schwinn has been trying to do that since she's been here. And most of the stuff that she's done, we have agreed with. Some we have not. But allowing a governor, and remember, I'm not talking about the governor, a governor, allowing a governor to wield influence not only on the Department of Education, but wield influence on an educational agenda on the state board creates zero separation, zero checks or balances. The Textbook Commission and the Standards Review Committee are broken up like this, but not the state board, because that's the final say. And that's what control a governor can have over the education of our students, no matter who it is. Sometimes, as some of my colleagues have said, sometimes they agree with the governor and sometimes they don't. But what if we all disagreed with the governor and we've got a state board of education that is answering to a governor and a department or a commissioner of education with the backing of the department or the governor applying the pressure to the state board? Is that what's best for our kids? I have ultimate confidence in Lieutenant Governor McNally and Speaker Sexton and the governor, Governor Lee, to, as this process takes and moves forward, to appoint good quality people representing all the different parts of Tennessee based off the congressional districts in each grand division. So one doesn't have the ability to pick one in one grand division. It has to be spread out across. I was taken aback by the phone calls that I heard that the governor was making today to members. Yesterday, I spent time with the governor face to face in his office. He made no mention of opposition to this bill to me. Sponsor of the bill, the bill in committee today, no mention of this to me at all. And no phone call from the governor to ask me, well, what's going on here? This is not about Governor Lee. This is not about the governor's department protecting this. This is about balance. This is about making sure the state board can do what's best for our kids. I'll be happy to answer questions, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chairman.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, this is an interesting topic. And look, the legislature's got an agenda, or the governor's got an agenda. I don't think, and I don't know if you're actually denying that there is an education agenda or who should control which. I think you're saying the legislature should control, but I think we have control over the rulemaking process ultimately, and it goes through the Government Ops Committee, and we certainly have a lot of leverage there to control agenda. But, you know, you raised the point about what's good for our children. I mean, if we got a legislature that's trying to ban books, is that good for our children? I mean, this is, I have to agree with the governor's office as much as that pains me. This is a solution looking for a problem. And it just, I can't get, I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to solve here because the process is already in place. If you could elaborate a little bit on what problem you're actually trying to solve, it would help me understand where you're going here. And then, Mr. Chairman, I apologize to book you on this before he responds, but I wanted to go out of session if the state board or the board of or the Department of Education wanted to address this today. I think we should invite them if they want to, but
Yeah. Well,
thank you.
I appreciate your request, but our rules that we had to have 24-hour notice for speakers, so we're not able to do that. But Chairman Speaker, would you like to comment before I go to the next person?
Well, that was a long question. Could you answer it shorter for me so I could follow you on that one? Just trying to get to the root of it.
Okay, stay on topic too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the point of your bill? What problem are you trying to solve?
You're recognized.
Balance on the State Board of Education to make sure that one branch of government doesn't have authority or autonomy over it. That's it. It's the separation of powers in our Constitution. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just trying to protect the board to make sure they can make the best decisions based off of the Speaker, House, the Lieutenant Governor, and the Governor.
Okay, we have two more on the list. Representative Hakeem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The fact that the legislature, if I understand correctly, we presently vote on those persons that are nominated by the governor. Is that correct? Secondly, the budget. We vote on the budget and have influence, input as to what the educational outcomes we're looking for. And I have to concur with my colleague, Representative Clemens. I'm trying to find out. I hear you saying balance, but if we already have the ability to stop X person from being a part of the board, we already have the ability to interject in regards to the budget. What are we after? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Chairman Vaughn, did you have a question?
That was a question, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. To the sponsor.
Chairman Speaker, you're recognized.
So I understand what about the budget. There's a lot there to unpack, and I'm trying to stay on the bill here. You're right. The General Assembly should take the budget from the governor under advisement. And we should make the decisions in the General Assembly about how we're going to do this. Let me finish. And so,
hang on.
When you talk about State Board of Education, the bills that we pass here that affect education will go to the State Board to promulgate rules. And you're right, then those rules show up at government ops for their approval. There's a rule that just got to Gov Ops on the CRT bill. And the department came to members of this committee and said, this is the rule that we're going to promulgate. These are the rules that we want promulgated. And members of this committee said, that's not what the intent of the bill was. And the department said, well, this is what we're going to do. Okay, now that's the department. But when you start talking to State Board, they have to have the ability to say no. This is what we're going to do without fear of repercussions from the governor's office to remove them from a committee or from a board that maybe the governor doesn't like the vote they took. The checks and balances should rest over here. Right now, it all rests with the governor, with the state board and the Department of Education.
Thank you. You through?
No, no.
Okay, you may have one follow-up, then I'm going to go to Representative Baum, then I'm going to go to Representative Cassidy.
Again, we have when I say the authority, when a nominee comes before us for the state board,
Mhm.
we can vote that person up or down.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
You recognize?
Yes, sir.
The budget, when the governor presents us an educational budget, we have the ability to vote it up or down or modify. Is that correct?
You recognize?
Correct.
I'm still trying to understand. I don't know what the balance is we're looking for. I hear what you're saying,
Mhm.
but are we in search of power or influence as opposed to a balance? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
You recognize, sir.
thank you very much. Representative, the two examples you give are post nominee and post budget. What we're saying is we want to get on the front end of that, on the pre-start, where these nominees that are coming to us are already attained the balance of being nominated by different branches. The budget comes to us from the executive branch. This is what the governor wants. And you're right, we do have that option. But the creation of that governor's budget on the General Assembly is very limited. Very limited. We get it post. We get a nominee that's given to us, and you've been here with me. We have a meeting upstairs on the 8th floor, and we spend 5 minutes with these people, and then we vote. Whereas if we had the confidence that these nominees were being broken up, then the pre-confidence we have on who we're approving would give us the balance ahead of time to know that these are coming from different viewpoints, so you just don't have one viewpoint ramming down education.
Representative Hakeem, I'm going to give you one follow-up, then I'm going to go to Representative Baum. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bearing with me. I go back to the nominee. I don't think it's a problem in regards to the nominees. If we don't ask or take the opportunity to do research, to understand who that person is and what they're about, is that on the governor? Is that on us? You're talking about spending 5 minutes with them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
Chairman speaking. Okay, Representative Baum.
Thank you, Chairman White. The House and the Senate and the governor and his staff have been working so efficiently and effectively to improve education. I'd hate for this bill to give the impression that we're somehow not on the same page, because I think that'd be false. Chairman Sabicki, have you given any thought to maybe having your bill dated in such a way so that it would take effect with board openings that begin maybe November of 2026 and thereafter, so that it wouldn't look like this was somehow directed at the Lee administration?
You recognize, sir.
Well, I'm trying not to drag Governor Lee into this, because this has nothing to do with Governor Lee. It could be whatever governor, because Governor Lee, for sure, will have, if he gets reelected, will have only 4 more years, and that's it. And then you're going to have a new governor come in here. And under the current system, that governor will start to appoint people to the board based off of what we've heard, an educational agenda, to make sure that when the department wants something, the department wants a rule a certain way, this is already set. This has nothing to do with our Literacy Success Act. We worked very hard with the governor's staff on that ad nauseum, just trying to make sure we get it right. The summer school, we work a lot with the governor. I'm not saying Governor Lee. This body works a lot with the governor's office to craft legislation. He's put forth a bunch of bills right now, and somebody made a comment about book banning. There's all kinds of bills out there that we work with the governor on. And that's why the implementation date was so that it's not a rash, it's not an abrupt change to everything. It's a slow, gradual process that by the time Governor Lee, if he's reelected, leaves office, there's still going to be nominees to be had. Hope that answers your question.
Okay, no follow-up. Okay, Representative Kastner? Question's been called for, it's been seconded. So we're now on House Bill 1838. Was asked for a roll call, so we're going to ask the clerk to call the roll. Those voting aye or voting no, make yourself known. Parliamentary question? We're getting ready. Okay, so you're recognized for a parliamentary question.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, but I recall reading the rules of the committee. I don't have a problem with this, but I thought we had to call a roll call vote at the outset of the bill presentation, according to the rules of this committee, but I may be mistaken. I'm fine either way, but I
Yeah.
just want to make sure we're following those rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Is a sponsor called for it before the vote? We're fine. Okay, Representative Castro has called the question. Seeing no further discussion, we're now ready for the roll call vote.
Representative Baum. No. Representative Cassidy.
Yes.
Representative Sapicki.
Yes.
Representative Clemens.
No.
Representative Cochran.
Yes.
Representative Darby.
Yes.
Representative Gillespie.
Yes.
Representative Hakeem.
No.
Representative Haston.
Yes.
Representative Lafferty.
Yes.
Representative Love.
No.
Representative Parkinson.
No.
Representative Reagan.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Hurt.
Yes.
And Chairman White.
No.
Mr. Chairman, your ayes are 9 and your noes are 6.
Okay, it passes out. House Bill 1838 goes to calendar and rules. Any further discussion of committee today, members? Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn? Okay, we're adjourned.